welcome everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. It's good to be here with you once again at OC Talk Radio. I think today's show is so timely for June of 2020. Not only is the entire world continuing to contend with the limitations and restrictions of a pandemic, we in the United States also find ourselves in a time that calls for deep reflection, both personal and social. Our show today is all about personal reflection, and I so look forward to chatting with successful entrepreneur Ashley Stanley about the kinds of mindsets and beliefs that keep us stuck in our own sandbox. The intent of the show is to uncover some of our own, what Ashley so aptly named, our own limiting beliefs. Each of us possesses unique potential, but because of fear and misguided understanding, we are often reluctant to pursue that potential because of these limiting beliefs. My guest, Ashley Stanley, is a business coach and an incredible brand and web designer. Ashley also empowers female entrepreneurs to do what Ashley calls, boldly do the dang thing and start a business online without having to deal with that feeling of overwhelm. Now, I'm keenly into this topic, and I think it's going to be fun. So let's bring on Ashley Stanley. Ashley, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super, super excited to chat about this today.
Yeah, and it's really sort of current in your life right now, isn't it? I mean, that you have a mastermind group that you're working through this with.
Yeah, so we are, I have a group that is of women that are launching businesses, and this is something that I work through with all of my clients one-on-one and in the mastermind is, before you can even jump into the land of launching a business, you have to first find those things that you believe about yourself, good and bad, leverage those good beliefs, and then learn how to combat those bad things that might limit you and stop you from pursuing your dreams.
Oh, man, this is, I am, Ashley, I'm so excited about talking about this because we chatted ever so briefly for 10 minutes on the phone about it, and I just said immediately, do you want to come on the show? I think this is so relevant. I know you deal with women, but it's also relevant for men. It's relevant for everybody because we all have limiting beliefs that are conscious, unconscious, emotional, socially driven, personally driven. There's, so many things going on, and I can't wait to discuss it. But before we get into limiting beliefs itself, I'd like to know more about you and your profession as a business coach and a brand developer. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I, have run my own business for almost 10 years now. Started specifically as a web developer, and then as I was developing sites, I needed to do more branding and design, so I branched out into that space, which is just so fun. I love helping people create things new, new ideas, new websites, all that kind of fun stuff. So that's been great. And then, I realized that while I was helping people build their websites, I really was helping them create their entire business. I would say around 90% of the people I was working with were coming to me saying, I have a brand new business idea and I need a website and branding. But really what they ended up needing was all the way across the board, every single part of launching the business. And so I ended up, helping them, walking them through all of that. So I've spent almost 10 years helping women launch businesses. And then in the past year said, I want to focus more, on actually coaching and saying, I do this. I've done this. I have created a process. And so I have one-on-one clients and then have recently launched a mastermind, which is super super fun of small group of women who are launching businesses who say, you know what, I'm ready to run full force. I'm ready to do this. I always say do it boldly, jump out of their comfort zone and really attack it. And it's fun because they're working not just with me as a coach, but have other women who are doing the same thing. And so we're all championing each other through the whole process.
That's wonderful. How frequently do you meet? Now, you meet on, is it an online thing, or do you meet personally? Well, now it's obviously got to be remote.
Yeah, it's actually always online. Each mastermind group runs for about 4 months. So we're all talking, connecting now, but this group officially launches July 1st. And then they'll run for 4 months. And then I generally take like a little break in between and then launch another group. How do you find clientele? I mean, that's fascinating. How do you find people who are interested in launching businesses? Do they come to you, or do you search them? It's definitely a mix. I am part of quite a few networking groups of just women who currently have their own businesses, women who are interested in launching their own businesses, and just kind of being a part of those groups and connecting with people. Either there are people in the groups that say, oh my gosh, that is me, I need help with this, or they say, you know what, I have a friend that has been talking about launching a business. I'm gonna send her your way. So there's definitely a mix, that referral side, and then also just being in the space of just continually connecting with women who are saying, you know what, I have a dream and I've always wanted to own my own business, and so I just build that relationship with them. And then the deeper they get in all honesty, what happens is you start to launch your own business and you say, I'm just going to do it all on my own. And then you realize there's a lot of things that need to happen, and it becomes overwhelming. And you say, you either say, okay, I need to work with a coach to help me, or you say, I'm just going to throw in the towel and I'm not going to do it. So I generally connect with women when they're at that point, and I say, don't throw in the towel. Like, let's work together. Let's create something awesome.
Because there really is, sort of a business strategy involved. But as we're going to talk about today, we get into our personal issues, because there are personal issues that really will determine the outcome. Our belief in ourselves, our belief in our product, our belief in our ability to do it, as opposed to all of these negative voices that say, who are you to try to do this? And so many of us have had negative voices because we've received such negative feedback from parents and schools and even friends saying, you're going to do what? You're not qualified to do what? And you have to kind of get over that, don't you?
Absolutely. That is, that's the reason in my whole, launch framework that I have. That's the very first thing. I say, you know what, we need to tackle this first, because this is a roadblock you'll continually keep hitting if you don't tackle it up front. I would say there's conscious limiting beliefs, things that you consciously go, oh, I'm not really smart enough to do this, or I'm not really, equipped to do this. But then there's those subconscious things too that you see, that maybe always growing up, your parents always said stuff about building your own business is hard, or, successful people, like it's really hard to be a successful person. And you may not think those things consciously, but they're in you, especially around those young ages in your formative years. You're creating those beliefs that you believe for the rest of your life. So you definitely have to become aware of them, in order to even combat them. So yeah, that's definitely a huge part of even being able to launch a business or really do anything big in life, is to say, what are these things that are stopping me that I know, that are ingrained deep within me.
Yeah, and I just had an interesting conversation with a microbiologist, and she was telling me about dominant regressive genes and alleles and all sorts of things that I have no idea what she was talking about, but it was fascinating. And she gave an example of that the way our memories work when it comes to trying new things or experiencing issues, that the first impulse that comes across our brain is not the memory of the negative thing, but the emotion of the negative thing. We really don't even remember what caused me to be negative about this, but I have this negative emotion that just jumps forward. So that's, sort of our think, Charlie, our defense mechanism against it is to say, oh, don't go in there because you're going to fail and you're going to look bad and people are going to reject you or abandon you, and you're going to be looked at as a pariah or as a dumb, so-called wannabe entrepreneur. But I liked, I not necessarily liked, but I appreciated that the emotion comes before the memory.
Absolutely.
And if we had the memory, we could attack the emotion. But without the memory, how do you attack the emotion? Sometimes the cause of that memory can be a resolve to understand where that emotion is coming from. Otherwise, we're just dealing with fear on its own level without fear digested logically or reasonably.
Absolutely. We actually, and I've done this myself. It's funny because of that. I have worked through. I still have limiting beliefs. I think everybody will always have some limiting beliefs. But I've worked through this process that I've thought, oh, this is I have this feeling, and this is what I think it comes from. And I kind of do this. Write it down on a piece of paper and kind of do this like levels. So I write it down and then I draw a down arrow and then I write where I think that came from. And it's always really interesting because it does take a while, but if you take that time to do that, you can come back to that memory and you can say, okay, this is the feeling, the high level. I felt this feeling, and I had one like a failure thing. And then as I dug down deeper, and I did each of those levels, I realized, okay, that was from this specific memory as I dug deeper. But I definitely agree. You have that feeling and you say, okay, I don't want to feel like this ever again, right? I'm not going to do this because I don't want to feel like this, and so then you have to kind of figure out where that came from. And then the other side of that is then you have to say, well, what is the real truth, right? And say, this was that memory or this was that experience that happened. And just because it happened once doesn't mean it's always going to happen. Or sometimes our memory is a little bit different and not the whole picture, So then you have to kind of create those truths and combat it with, this is the truth of that situation or the truth of what would happen if I ever was in that situation again.
Something that we had a guest on, and it was, I can't tell you how long ago. I don't recall. We don't have a. We're not one of the people with the thousands of podcasts, but we have this is number 156. So I've done this a couple times.
Yeah.
And I had a guest on, Jamie Lerner, one time, who's a psychologist. And we were talking about, I had a very difficult childhood, and I had these images that they were, in fact, memories, Ashley. They were not. I had the emotion from them, but the memories, and they were of abandonment and rejection, and for about the first 7 years of my life. And she told me something no one had ever said before, because I always viewed those emotions that I felt from that time of rejection and abandonment. I had always viewed those from the eyes of a child. This is what I felt. And she said, Charlie, it would be really helpful if you viewed those from an eyes of an adult. Don't view it from a childhood perspective. View it from an adult perspective, and you take a whole different position on it. And I gotta tell you, Ashley, how helpful that was. I mean, that was just that simple sentence was just enormously helpful for me.
Yeah, that sounds, I'm just sitting here going, wow, that's so good.
Isn't it? Yeah, I would love to take credit, but it was Jamie Lerner. And I do want to have her back on the show again. She was really a bright psychologist and very fun to chat with.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really fascinating. I think, mindset shifts and perspective shifts can be magical things. I think, even in small daily life, but thinking about things like that where it's this deep rooted memory and saying, okay, let's look at this from a different angle. I've never done it, but I would love to go back and start doing that now. I'm sure as things pop up, I'll think of that and say, okay, think of that through the eyes of an adult. How does that play out now, or how does that make you feel now?
That was maybe a year ago, and I've been doing that process. And then I took an extended retreat at the beginning of this year, where I had 6 days of sequestered silence, which my listeners are familiar with. But just so you know, I had a room. I was in Hilo, Hawaii, and although it made no difference because I never got to leave the room. And I had a 10-foot square space out in front of the room. They delivered food. No computers, no phones, no books, only a handwritten journal, and you were a month in solitude, or not a month, you were 6 days in total solitude. And believe me,
wow,
the experience of that and what I got to go through with me, and it was all about, for me, it was all about self-love. I mean, it was all about, I could love everybody else. I was great at that, and people appreciated that. But I really didn't appreciate myself to the degree that I would like. And it took that time of reflection, and it took that time of forced silence and solitude, so I didn't have distractions. And
wow.
And it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be an amazing experience. We actually talk about that quite a bit. So I I live in San Diego. I go to a church down in San Diego, and we talk. I'm not great at the silence and solitude thing. But I'm not so good at it, but that's something that we talk about quite a bit, and something that almost everybody else around me, it says, every time they've done it, they've just had such an amazing experience, and just you feel so much better just being able to take that time and step away and spend time with yourself. And I think that's a great and amazing practice.
Well, it's like what the limiting beliefs that we're going to talk about. We really don't want to go there because it's too painful to go there, yet we need to go there, but it is a painful journey, because you're talking about
Absolutely.
You're talking about things that you're afraid of, and that means not only do you think others disregard yourself for that, but you disregard yourself personally for it.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, you're probably less concerned what others think than what you think. Is that you don't even have confidence in yourself.
For sure. I think that's definitely, I know even for myself and for some clients that I've worked with, it's like, I don't want to say out loud that I don't believe that I can do this, or I don't want to say out loud that I don't believe that I'm good enough or smart enough to do something. You definitely, it's almost like if you say it out loud, then you really believe it, even though not saying it out loud, we all know that you still really believe it, right?
Yeah, but if you do say it out loud, there is something about saying it out loud that sort of cements it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I 100% agree. I think that you kind of need to cement it in order to be able to move forward from it.
Yeah, I want to catch that in a bit. That's something I definitely want to talk about. Now, do you think, one thing I wrote before we start talking, and just one more sentence before we start identifying limiting beliefs so our audience really gets an understanding of what that's all about. This is closely related to negative self-talk, is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is.
And
I would say they're pretty much the same thing.
Pretty synonymous?
They're very close. Absolutely.
Yeah. The maybe the limiting beliefs are sort of buried back in our brain, and once you do self-talk and the negative self-talk, it can become much more obvious.
Absolutely.
I don't know. But you know what? I know now's the time that we need to talk about, you mentioned a couple of them, but can you give me some examples of limiting beliefs so we can all get wrap our arms around what are the limiting beliefs that prevent me from seeking my potential and my opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ones. I think a lot of people have experienced different ones, but I think especially in the starting your own business arena, one that I run into a lot is it's just hard. Building a business is hard and making money is hard. And yes, there is hard work involved. And so I always find it interesting because with limiting beliefs, there sometimes is like little bits of truth in it, right? So
sure.
Yes, there is hard work in making money, but making money isn't in itself a really hard thing, as long as you have a roadmap. Or, owning a business is only for people who started off really well off. No one in the middle area or lower would be able to ever start their own business. Or, I don't have the right degree, so I can't do this. Or I haven't had enough life experience, so I can't do this. Or, no one will ever listen to me, are some that I run into actually quite a bit.
Oh, I could see how you could help people with that so much because it is it's certainly from a history of experience. They've experienced these kinds of issues, and that's why those emotions come up. But they're false. We're not trying to make them look any less difficult. Doesn't mean because they're false doesn't mean they're going to be easy. But with the right strategy, with the right coaches, and with the accessing the right resources or knowing what resources are available to you, it is very possible, as obviously as you see, to start a business and I, but you've got not only yourself to deal with, Ashley, you've got your parents have been telling you certain things about yourself, your teachers,
sure.
Your peers, you've got the society
sure.
and the culture at large. We really have a lot of things working against us in order to succeed. People think success, there's a reason success is difficult. But it's not based on luck. It's based on sweat effort and a bit of crazy confidence, a bit of readiness, willingness to go out and take a chance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you have to hit a point where you say, I don't care what anybody else thinks, which is hard. That's a hard spot to get to a point that you say, you know what, believe in this so much. I don't care what, my parents say, or I don't care what my friends say, or I don't care what my 5th grade teacher told me when she said I would never amount to anything. I don't care about those things anymore. I believe this. And that's one of the things that I always, when talking about limiting beliefs, I say, remind yourself that these beliefs, I don't ever want to negate somebody, and say, you didn't think that, or you don't really feel that. You do feel it, but it's more of saying, even though I feel it, that doesn't mean it's true. And so I always like to say, take the belief, and I actually have people list out these limiting beliefs that you have, and then write the truth next to it. So you can see very clearly, like, this is the belief that I have, but this is the truth. So, for an example, is I can't do this, or I'm not good enough to do this. The truth is I am good enough to do this, and I have the skills and the capability and the capacity to do this, and so every time this limiting belief starts to creep up, you can say, nope, I know I believe that. I know that's been ingrained in me, but this is the truth, and and have that to be able to look to.
I so agree with you, and I'm sure that then the next step from that is creating strategies or tactics to say, okay, there may be truth in this limiting belief that I don't have the wherewithal right now, but that's not because I am not as bright or not as capable as somebody else. I just don't have access to the information. I don't know the information. I don't know how to create a strategy. And if somebody helps you create a strategy and tactics to overcome your work areas or improvement areas, then you can see, oh, geez, I can learn my way into this. So, I didn't start, podcasts. You know how I started this podcast with Paul? I came to a class. He had a class. I was doing a podcast on my own, and he had a class that was how to do a podcast. And I ended up saying, why am I doing this on my own when I can come and have a producer?
Exactly.
And it was that simple. And we've been together, what, Paul, 3 years?
Wow, long time.
Yeah, we've been together quite a while.
Yep.
You know something, a story, my producer always loves stories, so I have to tell stories every now and then. But I was in carpet manufacturing, and I was I had a very good job, and I had 100 people reporting to me, and, I was sort of in charge of this called wet processing division of a carpet mill. And that is everything that has to do with application of color on a piece of floor covering. Before it's still in woven state. It doesn't have a hard backing on it or anything. We would put in these big machines. But I decided at 30 years old, I hate using the word I became a Christian, but God introduced himself to me. And 2 years later, I decided I wanted to go to seminary. But for me to go to seminary, although I had gone to college on an athletic scholarship, I quit it to become a full-time hippie. See, I'm a 60s guy. So, I had to buy a motorcycle and travel across the country. That was more important than getting an education. And so when I went to seminary, before I went to seminary, I took a look at it, and I took a look at a couple of schools and said, my goodness, they're going to want me to get my baccalaureate, plus then a 3 or 4 year degree in theology. And I said, it's going to be, I think the way I had figured it out at the time, Ashley, it's going to take me 5 years to do it. And I was 33. And I said, I won't even be able to enter the game until I'm 38 years old. And there was this 44-year-old man that told me, he said, Charlie, you're going to be 38 anyway. Do you want to be 38 doing what you want to do, or do you want to be 38 doing this crappy job that you don't like anymore?
I love that.
Isn't that a brilliant statement? It was the thing that turned me. It was the thing that turned me. Now I'm noticing my producer and what he's saying, and I know my producer is just about to give me a sign before we get really detailed. Give me a sign that we need to take a quick break. And then we'll be right back. Okay. Hi there, Charlie Hedges, and we are on the next chapter with Charlie, and I am so excited about my guest, Ashley Stanley, who is an executive coach and a brand website designer and works primarily with women, but her message is not only for women, her message is for human beings, and we will talk especially about women in a bit, but we're talking about limiting beliefs, and that we all have these limiting beliefs or negative self-talk that prevents us from continuing to, or not continuing, but to entering a field that we're afraid to because fear of failure. And the failure is not bad, but the failure reflects on, we feel it reflects on our personhood, don't we, Ashley? That it reflects on my value as a human being.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess I want to know, can you tell me the story a client that you've worked with that had limiting beliefs, and you were able to work her through a process to where she was able to develop a business, an entrepreneurial business. Do you have a story in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And this story, as unique as it is, it's also very common, is this woman said, I have a dream. I have this thing that in my heart, I really believe that this is my calling. This is what I need to be doing in life. But every time we would try to talk about it, or I would encourage her to share her business, there was always a block. There was always something that was like, I know that this is what I want to do. I know that this is what I need to do, but I'm scared to share it with anybody. I'm scared to put it out there. And so we had to dig into those limiting beliefs and say, okay, what are the things that you believe about yourself? What are the things that you believe about this dream? What are the things that you believe about, your ability? And it came down to, and I think that this is something that women especially, though a lot of people in general, it came down to what's called imposter syndrome, which was, as much as in my brain I know that I know what I'm talking about, my heart doesn't really believe that I know what I'm talking about. And so what happens is this belief that you have is, if I step out and if I share my business, or if I start sharing information, people are going to see through me, and they're going to see that I'm a fraud and I have no idea what I'm talking about, that's a really difficult one to break through. But it's also a really fun one to break through, because when you do break through, it's like the floodgates open, And so something that I always recommend doing, and this is what we did, what I did with her, was I said, write down the things that you know. So she wanted to create a course. And so I said, write down the information, write it all out. And once she was able to do that, she was able to look at the content and say, I do know what I'm talking about. I clearly do. It's right here, visibly in front of me, and just having that kind of, which is kind of my 3-step process, is identify that limiting belief, and then combat that belief with truth, and then create that action plan. So the limiting belief was, I don't know what I'm doing. And if I try and pretend like I know what I'm doing, people are going to see me as a fraud. The truth to that was, you do know what you're doing, right? You have the experience, and you have the history and the knowledge. You know what you're doing. So then that action plan was, write it out. Let's put all your knowledge on, a Google Doc, dump it all out there, and read it over, and let your heart and your eyes and your mind all sync up and see that this content that you've created on your own is full of knowledge, and then that allows you then to say, oh my gosh, I do know what I'm talking about, and break through that belief, which in turn gets you to a point where you want to share your business. You want to share, this new thing that you've created, which in turn allows you to grow your business, because now you're in front of the people who need to see it, right? So that was one story. But again, that's one that I run into quite a bit, is that imposter syndrome, or that concern of, if I do step out and if I do share this information, I'm going to be called out as a fraud.
Oh my goodness. Ashley, do you know how long I dealt with the imposter syndrome? I was a coach of executives. I don't know, we don't know each other well. I was a coach of executives. In my last job, I had 5 CEOs of billion-dollar companies. And if you looked at my resume, my bachelor's degree, it was a Bachelor of Arts in Humanities. I had no business degree. I had no MBA. I had no master's degree in business or economics. And I was sure somebody was going to find me out as an imposter. Even though
Right.
I went in and I never marketed my business. I only did it because it was all out of referrals. And it would be
Right.
one CEO to another CEO. Say, the CEO would say, I'm having issues with it. And they say, hey, I've got a guy for you. This is
Right.
the guy. Yet I always felt like an imposter. I always felt like, I've not been in this position. I've not sat in this chair. I don't know what
Right.
it's like to run $1 billion company. And yet, I can think of a company that I played a major role in taking them from $750 million to $1.5 billion by working with the CEO.
Yeah.
But I had to do that. I had to finally take a look at it and say, what results are you delivering? What lives are you impacting? And
Yep.
what is the P&L of the company after you work with it? Does the P&L improve with your working with the company? And I got to the point where I said, gee, I want to quit taking wages and just get a percentage off increase of P&L. And
Yeah.
but that imposter syndrome was huge.
Yep.
You know what I want to do? I definitely want to talk about the issue of women in business. And my wife and I are large. I really dislike titles of feminist or pro women movements and all, but we are very strong in promoting women in business and promoting women in general. Together started she's an executive coach, and she works with both women and men. She probably works with more men than women, except she has a group which I proudly say was my dream child, and it was called Influential Women. And it was like, you remember the old tech groups and the CEO groups? What are they called now? They're not called tech groups. What are they called?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we're in a... Yeah, but it's for CEOs. And so we wanted one for not for CEOs, but for high-level executive women that was VP and above, that are VP and above. And she does half-day meetings monthly. She does executive coaching with these women. She brings in a speaker. It's all non-competing industries, so they can be totally vulnerable and candid. What's going on in my business, how I'm feeling about my business, and they can get feedback from other women who are experiencing the same thing. And it's just a hugely successful business for her. And the women just love the group. It's, my wife is also very extremely talented and a very successful executive coach. But this is something that's part of our lives. And so we see men certainly face, it's just not our topic today, but we men certainly face limiting beliefs and negative self-talk. I mean, it is this is not gender specific. We are just dealing with, we're working with one gender, but that doesn't mean it's only women specific.
Absolutely.
However, women do have, I think they face more issues in a male-dominated business society. I think there are beliefs outside themselves that limit them, and they have to overcome that. How do they overcome a limiting belief in a male-dominated executive meeting that they feel like they have to be careful of what they say, when the truth is I think in many cases they only feel that way because the more vocal they are, the more accepted they become.
Absolutely. So, gosh, I have a really interesting background. So let me start with, I'm from a very entrepreneurial family. My mom has always owned her own business. Right now, she and my stepdad are the CEO. She's the CEO and he's the CTO of a biotech startup in San Diego. And then I'm from, previously to this, a tech tech industry, worked at many development agencies, and so we've both pretty heavily been in heavily male industries most of our lives. So that was definitely something that I experienced quite a bit was, what does it look like to have a female sit at the table? What does it look like, my first, I call it my first, big girl job, in a agency. I was the only female in a team of, I think the whole company, we had 11 people total, and I was the only female in the entire company.
What was that like, Ashley? Did you feel any, dare I use the word discrimination, any treated differently as a woman, or were you accepted as one of the guys?
Yeah, so it was very interesting. I would say 90% of the time, very much accepted. I became really good friends with almost all of them to this day. I mean, that was 7 years ago, and to this day, some of my best friends just in life are those guys that I worked with. But there definitely were some times where, we were a small team. It was also a startup. And so, in those kinds of teams, you're kind of all playing, wearing every hat, because sometimes you just got to jump around. And so I can very specifically pinpoint a few times where I would share a thought or an opinion on how things could be done better, or, we could change a process in a discussion where that was open and, and it was welcome. And it would be completely ignored until another guy said verbatim the exact same thing.
Oh, my goodness.
So there were a couple times of that,
Yeah.
absolutely, but not always. The one thing that I used to joke with them about, but it was fine, but we would laugh a little bit, was I was the token female of the group, and so whenever we would do networking events or something, they would always be like, Ashley, come with us, and I just, oh gosh, I have to go and say, there's girls that work here too.
Yeah, here's our negative. Here's not our negative, but here's our minority representative, just to show you how cool we are. That we are a diversity organization.
Yes, yeah. So we used to laugh about that, but it was interesting because I actually, while working at that company, got a call from someone hosting a Women in Tech event, and they asked me to be a mentor at this event. And I remember, and it was for women who were entering the tech space, so women who had done, I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but like the tech boot camps where you spend
yes.
a few months and learning. Okay, so it was women who were graduating from those and were going to be entering the space. And again, this goes back to imposter syndrome. That's exactly what I had done. I had done a tech boot camp. I had entered the space, and I was successfully working in the industry. And they said, we want you to come and mentor. And I literally said, I don't know how to I couldn't teach somebody how to do that. And they were like, you did it though, And so that was.
So how did you overcome that? Did you do your listing process to say what are the negative thoughts and what are the things I can do with that, or what are the limiting thoughts, and how do I overcome that? Did you go through that process?
I did. I said, I'll think about it. I'll let you know. I don't know if I really feel qualified. And then that night I went home and I was like, okay, Ashley, you did this, not the same program that they did, but a similar program. You got a job in the same fields that you did the program in. You've successfully been working at that job. You not only successfully were working at that job, but when the agency was being founded, the owner, who was a friend of mine, actually called me and said, you are the very first person I want on my team. So, I had to kind of list out those things. My belief was, I don't know this, I haven't done this, I couldn't teach somebody. And then I had to say, you have done this, you do know this, you're in it right now. All you have to do is share your experience, and you've experienced it. And so the action plan was, okay, let's go in and let's share my experience.
I think you said something just a bit back, but there was a key noun that I think really, a key concept that I think is very important that can help both sides, the person that's feeling imposter syndrome and the person that they're admiring, and that is the building of relationships. The better we build relationships, the better we understand each other, not as cogs in a wheel to get the job done, but we are human beings with vast capabilities, vast knowledge, vast difference of experience. And when we build relationships, we gain trust. And when we gain trust, from trust comes credibility. Do you not think?
I 100% agree with that. And then I would also add on to that, I think especially women, especially in the tech industry, you go in and you're being told, like, this is a guy thing. And so you almost feel like you have to create this fake persona that you believe will fit in. And so then you're never able to truly create those authentic relationships with people because you're not being authentic. And I think that for me, I've always been pretty able to be authentically myself with pretty much everyone I'm talking to. And so that was a great way to be able to be in there because I was being authentically myself. So I was able to, build those relationships. And then, like you're saying, through those relationships, you're building trust. And then they say, I trust you. Now I want to hear what you have to say. I want you at the table. I want to hear your voice because I trust you. I know you. I believe that you're smart and you know what you're talking about.
You said boldly. I mean, in order to build these relationships, it takes two steps. It takes a degree of self-confidence. You can't go into it fearful and sort of demoting yourself or demeaning yourself because you're not going to promote strength. It takes a bit of self-confidence, but it also takes a bit of boldness. And it would seem to me now please tell me if you disagree. I'm open to disagreements, but it takes the initiative not on the part of the male executive, but the female executive to initiate, say, I'd like to have some coffee and get to know each other and find out more about what you think and what I think. Because the male is not going to do that because he's already accepted and he's already in the good old boys club. And so if you're trying to get into the good old boys club, rather than force yourself in with guns and knives, is to sneak your way in through relationship, which, by the way, women seem to be very adept at doing if they have the boldness to take that risk, because it's a risk of rejection of somebody saying, oh, I don't have time. And if they say they don't have time, excuse me, but they're a dick,
No, I definitely agree. I think that there is a level of boldness that you have to have where you say, and really, this is in every area of life, not even just business, but in any area of life when you're trying to get what you want, you need to have a level of boldness, sitting, I always laugh. So I am an extrovert off the charts. Like every time I see personality styling, they say, Ashley, we can't even chart you. But most of my close friends are very introverted. And so I get it and I understand it. And we have these kinds of conversations quite a bit, especially my very best friend, is I understand the introverted, but there is that level of boldness that you need to have when you want to go after something, and so I think introverts and extroverts can all do it. I don't think that it's saved for one side. It may look a little bit different, but it's that willingness to step outside of your comfort zone to do the thing that is going to take you to the next level that you want to get to.
That really is the thing of stepping outside your comfort zone, isn't it? I mean, it's just, and that comfort zone means you're stepping out of a comfort zone and into a potential risk zone. To know that you're doing this, you're going into warfare, and you're putting your bulletproof vest on, and that's what it's going to be about.
Absolutely.
I have one thing I'd like to wrap up with, but my wrap-ups are always long questions. As you mentioned earlier to me on the phone, and I so agree with this, Ashley, that these limiting beliefs are much easier to break once you know they exist. Because for a long time, you don't even know that these limiting beliefs, you think that's who you are, so you don't even know it's a belief system that you have elected or allowed to control you. And so you do have a choice over it. As my guy that I refer to all the time, Viktor Frankl, just said, who came out of the concentration camp, and he said, we don't have control over matters of my life and experience of my life, but I have control over the way I'm going to respond to them. That is what I do have control to. And so I find that there's this universal truth in that you can't find solution until you truly understand not the problem, but the causes of the problem. It begins with the problem, but what caused that problem? And that's seen through things through an adult eyes, or doing, or like I love your wonderful exercises, because what your exercises are going from symptom to cause. What is the root cause? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think, we kind of always say it's like if there's a tree that's growing, perfect example, I have I'm trying to learn how to take care of houseplants during quarantine. And I've never been good at it, but I'm trying really hard. And I have a new plant, and some of the leaves had turned yellow. And I did some research, and there's a few different reasons why that can happen. One is just because they're old leaves, and that's, natural. But another is the roots. You have to check the roots. And so if I, just kept taking off those yellow leaves and never dug into what the real problem could be, those yellow leaves would still keep coming up. They might disappear for a little while, but if the real problem is the fact that the root system is broken and the root system is infected, those leaves are going to still keep coming. And so you think that you fixed it, you think that you've taken care of the issue, but really that was just the surface. So getting down to that root issue is really the only way that you're fully going to heal. You're fully going to get to a place where you can move on to that next step and move forward in your journey.
That's you picked an interesting subject, and so I have not a differing opinion, but a complementing observation, because I once, before I got this small property, I used to have like an acre and a third, so I had big gardens, and so I love gardening, and I had indoor plants. You know what I discovered the secret to indoor plants was? Everybody thinks it's water, and I tell people, your plants are not fish. This is not about water. It's all about light. You give them light, you give them the right light, and they're going to flourish. Now, if you don't water them, they're going to die, and if you don't have good root systems, they're going to die. But the key indicator is, do they have the light required for that plant? Right. And that's a complete aside, but that struck me. But I really do believe in going to the root cause. That's where the adult eyes and your process gets them to there. And I so admire what you are doing, and it sounds like you're doing it effectively, and you're helping so many lives. You must have a heart of a servant, Ashley, because we both know it doesn't, unless you're working. When I worked with CEOs, it's not necessarily a really high profit margin. This is about a passion, not about money.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, my heart in all of this. And originally, when I even first started, I was like, my favorite thing is just championing people to create their dream thing. Like it's my favorite thing when, the people that I'm helping or I'm encouraging or, whatever, like have that aha moment or, hit that goal that they've always wanted to hit. Like I feel the victory with them. I feel it. I'm excited, and so that's really, the heart behind this whole, like my whole business is I want to see people succeed, and so the best way that I know how to do that is to help them, break through these things and then, get their business launched and get them ready to go,
Oh my goodness! It's just no wonder we get along because that certainly is my heart. You've probably seen it on my site. That's what I'm all about is about meaning in life and having that opportunity for the next chapter and we are talking about your next chapter and evaluating the truth about yourself. And when you do that, your next chapter is going to be plentiful and abounding in goodness. And then when you are, and I gather from what you're teaching, you're in line with your natural talents, your natural gifts, your passions. And so then it becomes not a job, it becomes fun. Now, it becomes a pain in the butt at times. There's no doubt about that. I mean, jobs are not all fun, but the passion really pays off in the end.
Exactly. Yeah. If you want to make sure you're always loving it, and have a good why.
You have a good why. It's funny. I just talked to somebody last week or the week before about knowing your why. What is isn't that the name of that book, Knowing Your Why, or Understanding Your Why? I can't even think of the Finding Your Why. So. Find your why. And once you understand your why, then you can understand the how and what.
Absolutely.
Well, Ashley Stanley, this has been so fun. We truly, I say this like every podcast, but this one I really believe it, that we truly have at least 30 minutes more of conversation, that we will have to. What's that?
I said we could go all day.
I know. Well, because we're both, we're cut from the same swath, I think. Although you're the extrovert and I'm the introvert, but we have the same goals. And so I want to thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it is. I feel exactly likewise. You were so bright, so fun, and so passionate of what you do. I appreciate that. And I also want to thank our listeners for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And please be sure to check us out at our website, thenextchapter.life, and tell your friends where we exist, because our podcasts we're just getting more and more exciting guests. And I actually think I'm writing better blogs than I ever wrote, because I'm probably reading 2 days or 2 books a week, so it's increasing my writing ability. So we're just continually improving the site. And so until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.